So today I wanted to do a video about 7 tips for staying safe, sane, and spiritually sound during social isolation. That's a lot of S sounds. Um, and these tips are just very basic things to check in with and to talk about, especially when we're going through a period of social isolation. I know I'm spending a lot more time at home, a lot more time in front of the computer, and I think these are generally pretty good tips all around. Your first tip is structure your day. It's very important to make sure that you have some structure during your day. And the first question I ask is, what are some things you absolutely need to do every day? And these are things like waking up, making sure you have your morning routine, making sure that you take care of your hygiene, your cleanliness, exercise, prayer. Those are things that I have to make sure that are on my schedule. Certain things that you may need to practice and keep up on. If you play a musical instrument or if you have any other kind of hobby, thinking about things that you need to do every day. And think about things that make you feel good about yourself, that make you feel accomplished. For me, number one on that list is exercise, making sure I say my prayers, do meditation, someone you might need to call. And you'll notice a lot of these tips complement each other very well and repeat themselves because if you're good at one of them, you're good at all of them. So we're thinking about things you need to do every day, but also things you need to do a few times a week or once a week. Make sure you take all of those things into consideration. If you're taking care of pets, what do you need to do to take care of them? And make this a schedule that is something you can stick to, but not something that's too difficult. One thing that behavioral therapists, occupational therapists will ask you to do is to evaluate. Look at, I know I've been in social isolation and quarantine for at least 2 weeks now. So this could be a good time to grade yourself. How are you doing at life? And what kind of grade would you give yourself? And be kind, but also be honest. And it's okay if our grade's a little low now because it's a difficult time and we are in a time of crisis. But then we can ask ourselves, what can you do to raise that grade one level? So to be honest, for myself, in the past 2 weeks, I have not exercised as much as I used to beforehand. I haven't gotten out. I haven't walked as much. My eating habits haven't been as good. If you would give yourself a C or a D or maybe even an F, that's okay. But what are some things you can do and put in your schedule that could raise that one level? Okay? So number one, structure your day. The second tip is to find and create good rituals. So the first question I ask there is, what rituals were important to you before isolation? So thinking about your schedule when you were going to work, when you were going to school, what are some things that were important to you then? And then we can think about how we can have similar or equivalent rituals at this time. What are some new rituals you've acquired since being in social isolation? Definitely staying at home. It's a little bit of a new routine. I read online a really good tip that said, dress for the social interactions you wish you had and not for the social interactions that you do have. And I think that's really important to keep up with. Getting dressed in the morning. Don't stay in your pajamas all day. Don't stay in your nightgown all day. That's something that can be helpful. What items from tip number one, that is having a structured day, can you enrich by creating a ritual around them? So when we talk about rituals, I'm talking about ways that you like to do things. So there's the thing you like to do, and then there's ways you like to do it. So for example, let's say you have exercise in your structure. How can you create a ritual around that? Well, you can maybe reward yourself afterwards with a cup of tea or an elaborately prepared cup of coffee, or after you exercise, sit down and meditate, or when you meditate, light a candle, or tidy up the house first, and then sit down in your favorite spot and make this very special, very unique to you. When we talk about meditation, really there isn't anything that's absolutely necessary to do than to just sit there with proper position and do your meditation. But you'll find that a lot of people like to ring a bell, like to light a candle, like to sit a certain way, like to dress a certain way. Clothing can create a ritual. Wear that favorite hoodie when you go running, or wear that your favorite sweatpants when you sit down and meditate. Rituals around food, rituals around social interactions, setting up the space where you're going to Zoom is a wonderful ritual. Do you think about that? Do you think about the space that you have when you're interacting with your teacher or your students? There's a ritual right there. Think about what rituals are necessary. Okay? You have necessary rituals for bathing, for getting up in the morning, for eating. But what are some specific self-care rituals? Do you have a foot bath? Do you like to go for a walk? Just not even for exercise, just a nice, tranquil walk. Do you, I don't know, any kind of, I guess, beauty ritual that you might like to do, moisturizing your skin, shaving, exfoliating. These are all self-care rituals. Sitting outside and playing the guitar on the porch while watching the sunset. Beautiful things that you can treat yourself to. What are some creative rituals that you can add into your schedule? A ritual with drawing, or like I said, music, journaling, whatever it is that you do that is creative, artistic, life-giving. And then what about rituals that are just for fun? If you play games, if you play video games, if there are athletic games, these are always rich with rituals. So these are just some things to think about. When you're in a rush or running late, there's little time for ritual. They require setting aside a little time, and they require setting aside a little space. So if you're getting up at the last minute, it's going to be very difficult for you to have that elaborate cappuccino coffee ritual, right? That's going to create a little bit of stress, and then you're just going to throw something on so you get in front of the Zoom to meet your teacher. So that's something to think about. Tip number 3, celebrate the moment. Celebrate the moment. That always makes me think of that old international coffee commercial. Celebrating the moment requires being in the moment. And these are all good tips for meditation, but they're good tips for mental health. Practice remembering the things you're grateful for. And it might help to create a ritual about this. Set aside a specific time in the day to do this, or do this as often as you can remember. Whenever you remember to, practice mindfulness. Mindfulness really is just being fully in the present moment. When you notice, just feel what the chair feels like underneath you. Look around the room. Realize that you are there. When you do that, you notice a couple of things. Number 1, your mind quiets down. And of course, I'm going to repeat this when we talk about taking care of negative thoughts. Your mind quiets down, and then you automatically find yourself being grateful for what you have. You look around the room. Do you like your room? Do you like the space you set aside for yourself? And celebrating the moment and being in the present moment has a lot to do with remembering. Remember who you are. Remember that you're loved. Remember whatever it is you believe about God and about the universe. Remember that God loves you and that God dwells in your heart. Remember what God has done for you. And cherish the people you have in your life, the people you have right in front of you. It's so important to remember who you are. When our emotions carry us away or our fears carry us away, what's really happening is we're forgetting. We're forgetting who we are, and we're becoming something we're not. And it takes a moment to gather ourselves and come back to ourselves and say, hey, this is who I am, and I know who I am, and this is the person that I want to be. Number 4, stay in touch with people. This is incredibly important, especially during this time of social isolation. There are people you need to check in with. Think about them. Who are the people you need to check in with? Family members, mentors, people in helping professions. Don't neglect that. It's really important. But also think about the people that need you to check in with them. Your friends, your peers, people that count on you. Don't forget about them. Check in on them because they need somebody to talk to as well. And then think about new ways. Since we can't bump around with each other in crowded classrooms and malls and in the workplace, we have to think about new ways that we can be social during isolation. Can we send more cards? Write an old-fashioned letter, or maybe check out a new platform of social media that you've been afraid to check out, or utilize the ones you have in a new positive and creative way. Ways to stay in touch with people. Tip 5, have positive thoughts. Now that sounds a bit like a command. Have them, have positive thoughts. But of course it's not that easy. You can't just force yourself to have positive thoughts. I guess you could sit and think about this beautiful purple flower, but sometimes we have to work at it a little bit. So one of the first tips I would say is be mindful of what you're taking in. Everything. One of the secrets of Ayurvedic medicine, which is the traditional medicine of India, is that everything that you eat, that you see, that you do, that you take in is medicine. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect your mind. It's going to affect your body. It's going to affect your spirit. And so is it going to affect it positively or negatively? Is it going to exacerbate things, tendencies that are already a little bit out of order, or is it going to build you up? So think about this in whatever you're taking in visually, when you're watching TV or you're on the internet, when you're ingesting news, when you're listening to music. All of this stuff is medicine. All of this stuff is a magic spell that can help you or hurt you, that can affect your emotions and affect the way you see other human beings. How the way you spend your time, how is that making you view yourself? How is that making you view others? Okay? And again, when thinking about structuring our day, when thinking about creating rituals, what activities make you feel good about yourself? A very dear friend of mine said something that I think about all the time. We talk a lot in our society about the importance of feeling safe. And I know that in my own emotional journey, I've often talked about feeling safe. And my friend said to me, feeling safe is safe, and feeling safe is good. But that's not necessarily the same thing as feeling good about yourself. Sometimes feeling good about yourself requires you to do something a little bit more active, to take some chances, and that's okay. So think about things that make you feel good about yourself, things that you are comfortable doing. Negative thoughts. Now, the idea is to have a plan to help you deal with negative thoughts. You have to remember you are not your thoughts. And when you realize that you're having a negative thought, the first thing you need to do is just disengage. Don't fight with the thought. Don't try to change the thought. Do something else. Be mindful. We can go back to the tip about mindfulness. Remember who you are. Feel the chair. Look around the room. Okay? Because you're not your thoughts. Do something else. Walk into another room. Step outside. Pick up a book. Sing a song or recite a poem. Or as the ancient monks would say, recite a psalm or a line from a psalm. Something that reminds you who you are, reminds you what you believe in God. Again, we're practicing mindfulness. We're practicing a ritual that helps us remember who we are. Then, when you are a safe distance away from that thought, maybe the next day, maybe later that day, then you can deal with your thought. Some people say it's when you realize you're having a negative thought, write down what it is and then walk away, do something else. Later that day, when your emotions have changed, you can go back and you can look at it, and you might realize you feel very differently. It's interesting how when we have impulses, when we have really emotionally charged negative thoughts, or even when we have wonderful, positive, life-changing insights, epiphanies, all you have to do is just kind of step back a little bit or wait the next day, and they seem to just kind of fall flat. That impulse, oh, thank God I didn't act on it, or that negative thought, it doesn't seem as important to me. But even the positive, the epiphany, the insight you wrote down, or what the priest said at the homily, or when you went to church, you'll say to yourself, wow, that doesn't hit me like it did then. Because we're in a different space. That's good news, especially when you struggle with anxiety or depression, is to know that that will change. So it's okay to just leave the thought for a moment. It's not going to go away. If you need to pick it up later, it will be there. But just leave it for a moment and deal with it when you're in a safer space. And finally, the last tip is have a sense of humor. When your negative thoughts are in check, you're free to laugh. When you're not rushed or stressed, you're free to laugh. When you have someone you enjoy around you, you laugh together. If your rituals seem rigid and stuffy, add a little singing and dancing. And when your butt is tired from Zooming for too long, get up and dance. Leave room in your day and in your life for fun. I hope this illustrates how all of these tips kind of work together, and how so much of the work we're doing involves our mind and how our mind interacts with the world around us and the way we structure our day. I hope these tips are helpful during this time of social isolation. I hope they bring a little bit of comfort and a little bit of peace, and that's what I wish upon all of you, is absolute peace with yourself and with your God and with everyone around you, especially in difficult and trying times. Thank you so much for watching.